beware of making a covenant with the inhabitants of the land against which you are advancing, lest they be a snare in your midst. God says, do not make this covenant.
Israel's stated goals were the eradication of Hamas, and Hamas is right now patrolling the streets of Gaza, armed and violating, the terms of the deal to disarm and be exiled, basically.
The descendant of David would not have released those terrorists. He would not have shaken the hands of Hamas. That entire fact that we had to strike a deal with them was a desecration of God's name.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should always be connected to the land and people of Israel. We are back, and a lot's happened. It's been, I think, 5 weeks since we've all been together. Joshua Waller here, along with Rabbis Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel. So good to all be together. I don't know if we'll get complaints or appreciation in the comments section for that it's either been so long or that everyone's happy to see us back together. But feel free to let us know, guys. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you have all those notifications on, and let us know if you're a new viewer. I did kind of have like an overview of the news. Obviously, the big question we're asking today is, will Hamas really disarm? What's going on with the end of the war? Some people are saying what's really next for Israel, Gaza, all of that. But I was thinking maybe a better way to start would be each of us to share our like gut reaction to what happened this week. And I'll just start by saying my initial reaction on Monday this week was to intentionally tell myself that we had two separate things going on. One was the joy of hostages being released, 20 hostages being released from Gaza after 2 years in captivity, and like that joy knowing no bounds. But that had to be separate for me from the awful negotiation and ceasefire deal that came about as part of that. And it was a little bit too easy to like lump those things together and to have mixed emotions. So I had to be really intentional about like being, letting my joy be full over the potential end of the war and the hostages coming out of Gaza, and not looking at the, not letting that mix with the other emotions of the potential downsides to what's happened this week. So I don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Jeremy,
if I could weigh in on that, because exactly what you said, I'm always having my eyes into the prayers and into the Torah and into the words of the prophets of that week. Because one of God's ways of communicating with us is through the Torah portion of the week, through the words of the prophets. And this past Shabbat and these holidays, just in the text that we read, it says, beware of making a covenant with the inhabitants of the land against which you are advancing, lest they be a snare in your midst. God says, do not make this covenant. And on the other hand, it says the whole community, this is from the book of Nehemiah. It's an unbelievable, when you actually read the Hebrew, the whole community that returned from captivity, from Shevi, made booths and dwelt in the booths. The Israelites had not done so since the days of Joshua, son of Nun, to that day. There was a very great rejoicing. So on the one hand, God is saying, don't make a covenant. And on the other hand, we see this prophecy, really, there's no other way to look at it, about the Israelites returning home and being so exactly what you said. Jeremy said it to me beautifully. I was feeling this, my joy, unbridled joy, because I would give my life for any one of these hostages. They're in our prayers and our thoughts. It was our greatest dream. We didn't even let our minds go to the thought that they would all come home ever. And they're coming back, and so there's unbridled joy. But then I found it being tempered with this horrible deal that was, and Jeremy said, no, you have to feel 100% joy and then 100% rage at this deal. Think of it, just two of them. Kay Wilson, you know Kay Wilson. She and her friend, these are pro-Israel, Israel-loving Christians, were just taking a little hike in the Jerusalem forest. I believe it was the Jerusalem forest. Yeah. And they were tortured, stabbed. Kay was stabbed 18 times. Her friend was murdered in front of her. That terrorist is getting out. Daphne Meir, the terrorist, went to her front door. She opened the door with her children in the house. He stabbed her in the stomach. She pulled the knife into her so he wouldn't be able to pull it out and kill her children, murdering this beautiful, loving, compassionate, kind woman. Terrorist is going out. Become millionaires. They're going out to the millions that the Palestinian. So it's enraging because they're promising that they're going to do it again. It's not like they're filled with contrition and regret. They're like, we're going to do this again. The recidivism rate is 100%, at least in their desire. And so it was difficult. I just wanted to,
Well, I feel like that's just what it is to be in Israel. we celebrate Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day, and then we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. And it's not like one hurts the other. No one is like, well, I don't really want to celebrate Independence Day because we just celebrated Memorial Day. It's somehow to compartmentalize, to realize we have to be totally happy, grateful, and joyous with the return of the hostages. And as I'm watching these videos of these families reunite after 2 years, it's just like I spent most of the day crying because it's so emotional and so touching. And at the same time, to be absolutely outraged and distraught and upset and sad and but to not let one hurt the other. It's really to distinguish the full happiness and the full sadness and just experience it to the fullest. I went to this comedy for Kobe, which happened on Sukkot, and it's like a fundraiser for the Kobe Mandel Foundation that deals with, people that have lost. There's so many people have lost loved ones in this last war. And, every comedian, they want like a good setup for a magician that gets the crowd excited, maybe a good stand-up comedy that kind of gets people primed for and the whole first part of the show was just a movie about the Kobe Mandel Foundation. In the entire Jerusalem theater, people were crying because, there's children saying, I lost my brother, I lost my father, and everyone is so sad. And then the stand-up comedian comes on, and then the whole audience is just enjoying Sukkot, laughing their hearts away. And that's just what it is to be in Israel. That's what it is to be a Jew in the land. It is just to be able to live in these polar opposites and somehow contain them.
Can I just disagree slightly with you? Loving pushback. I don't know if it's compartmentalize or fully integrate. Fully integrate, meaning understanding that the mission of the Jewish people in this world is to raise the sparks of light from the darkness. And the greater the darkness, the more beautiful and radiant and brilliant are those sparks of godly light. And so we hear this from the hostages. They're coming out, we're hearing their stories. And these were people, a lot of them were in the Nova Festival on a holiday, not necessarily religious, but they're saying that they've never felt such a closeness to God, God's overwhelming presence, as when they were deep 40 meters underground and barely able to breathe. They couldn't see for weeks and months on end right in front of themselves, and they felt closer to God than ever before. Meaning there's something about the integration and the elevation that is part of the mission of why this is all happening.
I was just with what's his name? Avi Natan Or. So he just came out. Everybody knows him because he was the guy that was following his girlfriend into Gaza.
Noah
Argamani on the back of the
famous
picture. It was the first thing that really came out, and everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? It was one of the first things that hit, and it went viral all over the world, and they really became like the posters of the whole takeover, where they came in and started kidnapping. They were the kidnap posters. Well, I was just with his mother the other day, Avi Natan Or's mother, and so it became super personal to me to see the mother, just 2 years of this groaning and longing to get her son back. And so, of course, like you said, 100% joy to see this mother reunited and to see Noah and him back. They're giving him a big hug. It's like, that is amazing to see this family reunited. But then I thought, that's joyous. That's amazing. But how we got there, you're talking about the deal. Noah Argamani had the best save. That was through strength. You remember Noah?
She was one of the four that was rescued in the heroic operation.
With one of the most heroic missions of this whole war that we know about. They went in and they literally fought back the terrorists, got her and brought her out in the midst of gunfire and shooting. And these brave soldiers that lost a brave soldier in that battle. But that was through strength. And we all wished that would have happened to all of them, because then at the end of that war, Hamas would have been defeated and there would be no more hostages taken through strength. And so when Trump talks about peace through strength and that's what we were all expecting, because that's what was happening. So the letdown for me, I guess I have a letdown and then a rejoicing. The letdown is that Hamas still exists. The 22 terror groups that are just like Hamas are all running around us right now and continuing to operate in Gaza. The good side that I would say is exactly what you barely mentioned, Ari. And that is that the nation of Israel has gone through some sort of refinement that is beautiful to see. You said
going through
after, and they're still in it, but you see people that were pretty much their whole makeup was godless. You see them coming through this, and today they're shouting out on just seeing their children come out of Gaza, seeing these hostages come free. The first thing that they're uttering out of their lips, you see these videos going out everywhere. Shema Israel, they're saying, Hero Israel, Lord our God, the Lord is one, and giving God the credit for this great miracle that's happened. So, yes, there's a harsh feeling but on the other side, God's doing great things in Israel.
I just want to correct one thing you said there, in my opinion. I wouldn't say that their makeup was godless.
Mm-hmm.
I would say perhaps their level of Torah observance or God recognition was very alive but dormant within them. Meaning, when you look at the nation of Israel, it's hard with secular Western eyes to judge at all where the nation of Israel is at, considering what we've gone through over 2,000 years of really transcendently irrational history, but you see it in the people that it's to say it's godless. No, it has been activated. It's a little spark of light that is being fanned, and the flame is growing and growing and growing in the heart of the nation of Israel.
Well, let me tell you something that Josh is saying, like the nation is being refined. There was a video that I saw on Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of Sukkot, which means the great salvation. And that was the day, 2 years to the day, that the hostages were being returned. And there were thousands of Jews at the Nova Music Festival site. And they were all singing and dancing and waving the lulav and etrog and the 4 species that we've been commanded and we lived with for more than 3,000 years. And it's just such a sight to go from a Nova Music Festival on Simchas Torah to the great salvation where there were thousands of Jews. Check this video out.
This is amazing.
It's incredible.
Talk about Jewish resilience.
Yeah.
So let's contrast that with what that very site looked like before October 7th. And it was very secular music, probably hallucinogenics and drugs. And there was even some sort of, Buddhist-looking, idol-looking thing. They weren't worshiping the idol, obviously, but it was just their sort of Eastern type of decorations. And now look at that, right? It says the sages of Israel teach us that Haman was able to accomplish what 70 prophets were not. Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah saying, "Return, O Israel, listen to the Lord your God." And we're a stiff-necked people, and we're not returning. And then Haman said, the nation of Israel will be wiped from the face of the earth. And that actually was able to kindle a true return and repentance. And so I know it was definitely not Hamas's conscious motivation to bring the nation of Israel to a level of connection and service and closeness to the God of Israel that is happening. But look just at the transformation.
Well, what's so beautiful about that transformation? What's so beautiful about that image? Meaning, if there were a lot of people that gathered together at the hostage square and singing songs, there's something about the fact that they're holding the 4 species commanded in the Torah. The fact that they're returning to the Torah and expressing it. It's like living out that 3,000 unbroken chain of like just this incredible return to the land of Israel. And then under all of these stress and pressures and the circumstances, it's like a light that's being released into the world. And it's like the challenge is sort of crushed us into a diamond.
Before we get back to the rest of today's podcast, I wanted to quickly tell you that we have some amazing patches on the Israel Guys store that you can get right now today and get it shipped right to your home. First off, we'll start with the ultra viral Mashiach Temple patch that almost every IDF soldier in Israel has been wearing for the last 2 years. This patch has gone around the world. We're talking about thousands and thousands of these patches being worn inside Israel, in Israel's IDF, and by supporters of Israel all over the world. You can still get that one. It sells out all the time on our store, but we have it right now. We've got a green Israeli flag if you want to support Israel's IDF. We also have the Greening Israel Circle Patch, which is really cool for our Greening Israel program, tree planting here in the land of Israel. If you're an Israel Guys fan, you can get this patch. And of course, we have the Biblical Route 60, the Route 60 highway patch, which if you've been to Israel and you drive on Route 60 from Jerusalem to the Mount of Blessing where I'm sitting right now, this is the biblical highway. This is something that we're trying to get off the ground. If you want to support the biblical highway, you can get this patch. So you can get one or all of these patches. We'll put a link to all 5 of them down in the description below. If you want to support Israel, stand with Israel, stand with the IDF, and get one or multiple ones of these patches today. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, even during the captivity. I don't know if you heard of Ron Broslavsky. He was deceived by Hamas into believing that Iran actually destroyed Israel. Israel was destroyed.
Wow.
And he was offered food and gifts in exchange for converting to Islam. But he refused. And the first thing he did when he returned back was he put on tefillin.
Wow.
And he said, no, I am a strong Jew. What is this? You know, that's why I'm saying it's to say that their essence is godless is not true.
That's right.
It is strong in their in the soul of the nation.
But that's also why I think, you know, you kind of framed the show as, will the Hamas disarm?
Yeah.
And if we do disarm Hamas in Gaza, there's so many other Hamas representatives here in Judea and Samaria. But looking at it as if it's an organization is so Western.
Yeah.
This isn't about Hamas, the organization, or the political establishment. It's like looking at Antifa and being like, well, now the Antifa organization, and I don't even know if they are an organization. It is a spiritual war that we are at right now. It's not against a political organization. It's an ideological, spiritual movement, and that needs to be defeated.
Look at this video. I want you to see this video right now. This is one of the terrorists that was released in this deal, came back, and here's what he said. In this video, he addresses a prison service investigator that told him, you will not be released in a deal. You will not be released just like that. And yet, we were released. First of all, I didn't hand over my brothers. We were released. And you see my son, he'll come for you just like on October 7th. That's what he said there. He said, we were released and you see my son, he'll come for you just like on October 7th.
You know, the other thing that I want to point out about this is that they're celebrating, to Jeremy's point, they're celebrating the release. Remember, this is Hamas-ruled Gaza, is celebrating the release of Fatah prisoners and other terrorists from other terrorist organizations. Why are they celebrating the release of people that aren't a part of their affiliation? These people have one goal, and though there's 22 terrorist organizations operating in the area, they're all united in that one front to attack and annihilate
they hate
the
each
Jews.
other and they want to kill each other, but like you said,
They're literally
all
celebrating.
united against Israel.
And they're celebrating the return of fellow comrades in arms.
Yeah.
They of course, they have some animosity between themselves, but they're literally celebrating the release. That was a huge thing to me when I saw that and saw these guys. I said, whoa, that's a big wake-up call. That the world should understand.
The world needs to understand that it's not a hostage swap. I mean, Simcha Rotman, the member of Knesset, said he kind of put them one next to each other, like who's being released from Israel's captivity and who's being released of these Hamas terrorists or Fatah terrorists. And it's like, he's a pianist that works in his father's bakery, and this man murdered 8 people, did this and this crime, and it's like, how are they even being compared?
Yeah.
It's just so evil.
But on the other hand, when you say the world needs to understand, I've come to a place where I think that needs to be redirected and say, we need to understand. Mm-hmm. Let's stop getting consumed with what the world needs to believe and start understanding what we need to believe. Because if we believed that, then we wouldn't be releasing them. The fact that we are releasing these terrorists and then people say, what? You don't want to release them? You don't want the hostages back?
I really don't agree with what you're saying now. You're saying that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't know the difference between Hamas terrorists, Fatah terrorists, and the hostages in Gaza?
I'm saying that if we had, the nation of Israel had a leader that was a reflective of the heart and soul of Israel right now. I'm not against Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think he's doing his best and he loves the nation of Israel. But I also think that the parallels between him and Saul are very powerful, and he's not the descendant of David that we're waiting for, because the descendant of David would not have released those terrorists. He would not have shaken the hands of Hamas. That entire fact that we had to strike a deal with them was a desecration of God's name. But well, does that mean I don't care about the hostages? No, I just believe that there's another way that we could have released them a lot earlier without needing to strike deals, but we constrain ourselves by the opinion polls of Western countries, which clearly don't care about our Western fluffy liberalism because they're siding overwhelmingly with Hamas over us. All I'm saying is at the very beginning, for us to, first of all, we should have unleashed on Tehran October 8th. But that aside, we should have gone into our prisons, and I'm not going to get too graphic, even though in my heart there's a graphic description of the humiliating executions that we should have done for the leadership of Hamas. You have to understand, I'm not talking about some Arab in the street. The leadership of Hamas that was responsible for the rape and pillaging and baby burnings of October 7th, take the top 10 of them out, execute them in a humiliating way, put their heads on stakes, and broadcast that to Gaza and say, tomorrow, this is going to happen to every single member of Hamas, and we're going to be annexing all of Gaza. And the next day, they would have released those hostages. The next day. What? We didn't strike a deal? We don't need a deal. Now, what do you say, Jeremy? Where am I wrong there?
I'm saying that I don't think that the prime minister or anyone in the Knesset was looking to Western countries to sign this deal or not sign this deal. The vast majority of Israel wanted those hostages out. They just wanted the hostages out, not at any price, but the price that they were paying. If you were to take a poll now among the Israeli people, people are just so happy. Yes, okay, so we released X amount of terrorists. It's a disaster. But I was at the funeral last night of Daniel Perez, who was the tank commander who heroically went up against, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of terrorists that were just flooding into Israel alone with his tank. And he was the tank commander, and his two of the people in his tank were killed, and Matan was a hostage that was taken from his tank. And Matan had just been returned to Israel, and he came to the funeral 2 days later. He said he could barely stand. And Rabbi Doron Perez, who's a close friend of mine, he said, we are the smallest of all nations, but we are the biggest family. And I think that because the people of Israel see us as one extended family, they just wanted their family out of that hell. I mean, you talked about Avinatan Or.
Yeah.
He literally lived in a cage for 2 years in the darkness in the tunnels.
Solitary confinement.
It's just like how much, like,
worse.
Tehila told me that for the first time in 2 years, I mean, we were at the supermarket just buying food for Shabbat, and she just was watching on a television screen the return of the hostages on helicopters, just the very beginning, and she just burst out crying in the middle of the supermarket. And she's like, I can breathe for the first time in 2 years. And so people wanted so badly to, and it's not that they couldn't distinguish between the terrorists and the hostages. They just wanted the hostages back.
I am not blaming the nation at all, nor am I blaming the leadership, who I think did their best. What I'm saying is that Sinwar was, after being operated on, he had a brain cancer, and Israel paid for his brain surgery, saving his life, then traded Sinwar and 1,000 other terrorists with blood on their hands for Gilad Shalit, which led to October 7th. And so now one could deduce how many Jewish lives are going to be brutally ended, children, babies, because of this deal. That doesn't mean that I don't want the hostages back. I wept when they returned, and I would have happily sacrificed my life to bring any one of them back. I'm just saying that on a national leadership level, it didn't need to go this way. We could have brought them back in another way that just demanded a higher level of strength and courage and power and leadership that I think is, listen, it played out the way it was supposed to play out for where we're at in history, but I'm saying this is going somewhere.
Well, I really agree with that. And I think that what we've done is we've incentivized more kidnappings. They're like, well, that really worked.
That's what we're all sitting here wondering.
Yeah,
and I mean, that's the Israeli response as well. Even with all of the joys of seeing these people back, it was like the Gilad Shalit deal, the same thing. That is when Sinwar was released. And how many leaders did we just release back in to invigorate again this terrorist movements across not only Gaza, and that's the big thing. Gaza's pretty well. I mean, they've bombed that place pretty signisignifically. That place is not being rebuilt anytime very soon. It will be something
one
that
house is estimating that'll take $120 billion to rebuild Gaza.
Well, the unfortunate news is that there's $120 billion sitting there ready to be rebuilt.
Well, parts of it are already being rebuilt. I mean, I could show you these videos of, like, restaurants are already back open.
This was appalling to me.
Supermarkets, like, just check this out.
This was unreal to me to see this. I was like, wait, after 2 years of full-scale war in Gaza, and we're seeing this happen? Like classy restaurants? Obviously, we were a little bit deceived in what was... There's some parts of Gaza that were not touched, it seems.
No, people need to look at that and realize that they've been lied to. The genocide, just absolute lies. Look at how they're living. Look at the restaurants. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you know, when right before the release of these terrorists, one of them headbutted the prison guard and wasn't released. Why wasn't he released? Because he didn't want to. Think about Daphne Meir's, he was 15 when he murdered Daphne Meir. Now, what happens? He goes to prison. He gets visitation, health care, education in Israel's leading universities. He's constantly having accrued massive salary.
His
He's going to be released, and eventually he's going to be released in a trade. When he goes back home, his whole family's prestige has gone up. He will be sought after in the dating world. They're going to be constantly setting him up with girls. He's going to be a millionaire. It's shocking that there's not more attacks when it seems that Israel is doing so much to incentivize it, right? And now an Arab would say, why am I working in construction all day? I could kill some Jews. I'll have honor. I'll get an education. I'll go to prison. I'll get, there's not a lot. And we're further incentivizing it because they know they're going to get out in the next deal.
And global recognition. I'm appalled by The Guardian these days. Every headline I see out of there is I'm like, what in the world is going on? Locked up for 24 years, released Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
Prisoners and detainees, yeah.
These people are terrorists, brutal, ISIS-like terrorists.
Murderers.
Well, there's all these videos reacting to Hamas releasing hostages versus terrorists being released from Israeli prisons. They're saying, like, look at how Israel treats, these prisoners being released versus how Hamas. You're talking about, like you're saying, murderers who've killed families, women, children, multiple people being released from life sentences when they should have been received capital punishment probably, versus innocent people who were kidnapped while, on 2 years ago.
BBC, Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza celebrate detainees release. New York Times, freed Palestinian prisoners prisoner reunites with his family in West Bank, all
Detainees.
With these big pictures of their mothers crying, hugging their wives for the first time in, years and years. What they're trying to do is so cynical and so really like demon in its greatest form. Deception at its finest way. They're trying to make the worst and most brutal human beings on planet Earth look somehow justified in their fight against Israel, because it's for freedom. These guys are freedom fighters, and they're coming against the oppression of Israel. Israel what? Israel trying to live in its ancient homeland safely and securely for the first time in 2,000 years, that people without a homeland have come back to their homeland to settle and take possession of their land, their ancestral homeland. And these proxy forces from every Arab nation all around Israel have all gathered here to fight against the Jews and their right to the Holy Land of Israel. And somehow they're getting this global recognition in their proxy war against Israel and backing to continue it.
Right. The projection that's happening here is overwhelming. First of all, they say, Israel, you're land thieves, you stole land. Let's remember that there was a war. Israel was outnumbered extraordinarily because the Arabs rejected the UN partition plan, and Israel won. That is called a victory in war. Okay. And number two, Israel has had the opportunity again and again to annex the Sinai and bring in Syria, bring in Jordan, bring in Lebanon. We're not doing that. I think it's something that Israel should definitely consider. But meanwhile, you hear the entire Arab world is going and jihad to all of Western civilization. Listen to this. Listen to this guy right here.
We are the messengers of the messenger. We are the representative of this deen of Islam. We have to be the solution. The future is ours. Every ideal nightmare of a Muslim Europe will come true. They can be as mad as they want. I don't care. America will be a Muslim country. Russia will be a Muslim country. Islam will enter every house. We have to be a part of that change. We have to be a part of that da'wah. We have to be a part of those ghuraba who stand firm on our aqeedah and our practice and our deen and never, ever apologize. We're unapologetic. Never, ever compromise. We're uncompromising.
And Israel, when's the last time you heard a Jew saying, "We will make the entire world Jewish. We will go and spread"? Never. But yet we are called the colonialist imperialists when there's nothing more indigenous and natural than a Jew living in the ancient homeland of Judea, which, by the way, not only did we conquer, but then we go and purchase it from those that we conquered. The land has been conquered in a defensive war and purchased. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Islam is going and violently, brutally, genocidally declaring war on the entire world, and they're calling us that. I mean, it's so rich that I don't know what to do with it.
To me, the only light that I see in all of this is the fact that the Vatican has built a small Muslim prayer room in the Vatican.
Is that for real?
That's real.
Does that actually happen?
I thought it was maybe just fake news, and I Googled it, and it's absolutely real. That they've built a little mosque-like room in the Vatican. And I'm wondering, wow, that's just so interesting. What's going on here? How are these forces coming together in such a powerful way? And the truth is, what's happening is there are just different forms of the same replacement theology. They both replacement religions, and both of them theologically hate the people of Israel and hate the fact that the people of Israel have returned to the land of Israel and that we are an expression of the sovereignty of the God of Israel. They cannot handle it. And the enemies of the Jews are really the enemies of truth. That's why it's all the same thing. They're calling terrorist detainees because we expose the truth that there is light. These hostages are just beings of light and faith versus beings of darkness and terrorism and hate. And it's such an obvious contrast that there's light and there's dark and there's truth and there's lies. And because they are, and that's so much a glaring manifestation of God's truth in the world. They have to attack it. They have to call the terrorist detainees. They have to somehow figure out how to not make this about the truth. And so they're going to distort the truth.
Can I say one thing, Luke? This has just got me cracked up because these people, the least likely people to gather together in the whole world, they're the greatest form of and hilarity, I guess you could say, happening here in the land of Israel right now is there's all of these nations that are gathering here, provocators. They're trying to, they go into these Arab villages and they try to stir up violence against the Jews. And they're from places like America and the United Kingdom, and they're all these natural, they're these Americans that have, American for whatever. I mean, very American people, not like new immigrants. They're not like these, Arab people that have just arrived in America, like the guy we just watched saying we're going to take over America. No, these guys are like serious lefties that just have joined forces with these guys. Literally right now, they're running around all of Judea and Samaria. They can't get into Gaza, most of them, any of them. And so they're running around here, and this is what they look like. Look, this is so, I mean, literally, this, because you can't tell right now. This camera's going to turn around in just a second. I think this represents the group very well. He's screaming at a bunch of goats. Here it is. That's what he's doing.
First of all, my first shepherding experience did not look altogether different than that.
Yeah, but he's not the shepherd. That's kind of the point.
He's literally mad at the goats. And let me explain this a little bit. He's mad at the goats because the goats are Jewish goats holding down land that belongs to Israel. It's Area C land. It's land where the Jewish people, even by the Oslo Accords, these shepherds are holding down Israeli state land. And these people, these leftists from all the world, come to these Arab villages and go out and act like wild maniacs against these lone Jewish shepherds. And many times it turns to violence. It's actually a very violent thing. Many Jewish shepherds are being harmed right now by this incredibly violent, hateful thing that's inspired by these lefty idiots that are coming into Israel and trying to cause this harm. So,
well, also you understand why, because that is the deepest type, the deepest manifestation of the spiritual revolution that's happening. And we've said this before. What is a real revolution? A minute hand has one revolution around the clock. It goes back to the beginning. For the nation of Israel to return to its ancestral homeland and be shepherds again in the hills of Judea,
that's what
we're returning to our deepest essence, to one part of our most ancient identity, and they can't handle that. That is their wars to the degree I want to have coffee with that guy.
Figure out what makes him hate those goats and that Jewish shepherd so much. Like,
I don't know. I wasn't noticing very many brain cells there. I'm not sure.
Well, it's the first time in history that there has been an organization or a movement that has kidnapped an 8-month-old baby, and then people like that side with them.
Right.
It's like people like that are just out of their minds.
We'll get back to the podcast in just a second, but I did want to tell you about the Biblical Highway Route 60 Tumbler. This is a favorite amongst our team here in Israel, and it's something that we created to help bring awareness and attention to Highway 60. Runs from Beersheba all the way to Nazareth in Israel. It was a major trade route all the way back to the times of Abraham. All of the characters in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, traveled on this road, and today it's a modern highway that cuts straight north-south through what the world calls the occupied West Bank, but what in reality is Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, Israel's biblical highway. We have Mike Pompeo and former ambassador David Friedman that made an incredible film about this highway, and you have Yishai Fleischer talking about the Biblical Highway brand. We're bringing back attention to this amazing road, ancient, also modern, and there's actually a movement to get it recognized in Israel's parliament. But you can stand with the Biblical Highway very simply, and actually the design, it actually comes back to Route 66, which is obviously very well known in America. But you can get this biblical tumbler, also the patch, today, and it's just an amazing way to, again, support Israel's right to be sovereign in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, their biblical heartland. Back to the podcast. I want to bring this back around to kind of the topic we started out with. Let's just talk about where are we at right now after the events of this week. So I believe Trump and Bibi Netanyahu both made a statement and said the war is now over. Obviously, the big question is,
wrong.
Is the war actually over? I'll get into the second.
Well, just a few parts of that details of this of this deal is that the Rafah crossing will now be open wide with trucks full of goods, supplies, and inevitably weapons will be coming in, and Hamas will be able to reconstitute not only with the fuel and the weapons, but also the terrorists that are being released back into their ranks.
That goes right into
because it's 1,700 terrorists that were captured during Israel's war in Hamas are now being released to reconstitute its ranks. That's why Hamas agreed to this deal, because they're saying now we'll be able to really reconstitute. And not only that, Israel is inviting this multinational force with Qatar and Turkey to take effective control of our border, meaning we're entrusting them with our security. That Netanyahu signed this, that even if Hamas violates the agreement, it will be this international force, not Israel, that will respond, as if Qatar and Turkey are going to come in and protect Israel's borders from Hamas. It's the ones that funded it to start with.
Let me just list the nations that are part of this multinational force, right? You've got Indonesia, which is, I think, like one of the largest Muslim majority countries in the world, something like that. UAE, Egypt, Qatar, and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan.
Go ahead.
They have
funding.
U.S. is saying they're going to send 200 troops. Apparently, they already have like 24 on the ground here. I'm not sure what 200 American troops are going to do if war breaks out again, which is very likely. Hamas has already executed like 50 of their own people in the streets. Hamas has already showed up again in the streets, outwardly armed, not in uniform, because they've never fought in uniform since day one.
Probably don't even have them.
But yeah, they've already basically started taking over Gaza again. You got all 20 of the living hostages were freed this week. They've released a few bodies of the deceased hostages. There's supposed to be 28 that were supposed to be released by Monday. So far, there's only been 9. The peace talks in Cairo, Egypt, they're saying there's going to be 15 Palestinian technocrats that are going to rule Gaza. They haven't even said who these people are. But you do have Yasser Arafat's nephew, who has returned from a self-imposed exile, or he was like kicked out of Fatah, which is the Palestinian Authority, returned to Judea and Samaria, and he's saying he's ready to take over Palestinian Authority and Gaza and Hamas if possible. He's got this whole plan to turn Hamas into a political party, which is ridiculous. It would never happen
Nasser
at all.
al-Qudwa.
And then you have Trump.
Sounds like a trustworthy fellow.
Now, and obviously the biggest part of this whole agreement is that Hamas would disarm, right? And obviously they haven't even shown a hint of that. They've shown the opposite by appearing in the streets armed and killing their own people again. Trump says, it's a very Trump thing to say, he's going to forcibly disarm Hamas. I'm not sure how. or when. I guess the question is, you were mentioning this before the show, Ari, maybe you can talk about this, is why would Hamas agree to release the hostages, and their side of the deal is to disarm? They've released the living hostages, and now obviously they're not disarming, which we all knew they wouldn't. Like, what is their motivation here?
Well, I think there's a bigger plan here, and I think that they recognize that the potential, they made a big mistake at the beginning of this war by preemptively attacking, because Iran spent billions of dollars and decades creating this ring of fire around Israel of all of these jihadist countries, and the Hezbollah and the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and the Houthis all around Israel, and they were supposed to attack Israel all at once in one coordinated attack. And Hamas jumped the gun, and that was a mistake that cost them and the entire region dearly. And I think that they're playing a bigger game here, in my opinion, which may be worth next to nothing. I'm a chicken farmer in Judea, but I think whether it's their conscious idea or not, the stage is being set for Qatar and Turkey, and Russia also has a presence in Syria. All of these nations around the world who are not lovers of Israel but haters of Israel are going to have actual military presence on the ground. And if anything happens to any of them, that is now a declaration of war on Russia, a declaration of war on Turkey, on Qatar. And this is setting the stage for the prophecies that the Torah says, that all of the nations are going to converge on Israel, on Jerusalem. And in that day, when they're converging and they're licking their lips and they're saying, it doesn't matter the truth, right or wrong, kindness or evil, it's what might makes right, and we're going to attack and destroy this conscience of humanity, which is Israel. We're going to destroy them, and right as they're converging on Israel, and we're in this land, and we're going to look up and say, God, we have no hope here. We have no chance. Help us. There will be a very, very great divine, I believe, a divine intervention. If it's thinly veiled, it will be thinly veiled through the IDF, but I think that there's going to be something great happening. So
literally
I'm feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
Hopeful about this.
Literally, the playbook is being, I mean, we have the north, right? Jeremy has mentioned many times in prophecy the enemies coming from the north, but is Turkey and Russia, is that qualify? In Jewish thought?
Turkey is actually a part of NATO. So if you attack Turkey, you've now attacked all of Europe, and they are bound to stand with Turkey. So it really is like lighting a fire.
America too, right?
Well, America
technically
has,
speaking.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm saying these people on this committee now, what do they call it? Not the committee, but the governance, whatever it is, now that the Rafah, or the Rafah crossing there is open, that goes to Gaza straight to Egypt. And we know before that Egypt, there was so many tunnels. Egypt is one with Gaza as a proxy war. Nobody will ever tell you this, but this is the fact. They are one with this war against Israel. They have a peace treaty, but it means absolutely nothing. If you ask deeply in the IDF, they will tell you that Egypt is the number one concern and threat to Israel. And these are the people that are going to hold the keys to the gates of another access point into Israel, close, deep with inside of Egypt now. They have
people
this
don't
force
know
there.
that there's 200 tunnels that went under the Philadelphia corridor into Egypt.
Saw them.
Some of those tunnels were roads, like highways for trucks to go through. I think they even had like train tracks that
How
went
has Egypt
underneath
gotten
them.
out of this? I
I
mean,
mean, this is from Egypt into Gaza.
People should know Egypt is not a peace. That peace deal should have been shredded as soon as they found those 200 tunnels going in that they fed and supplied Hamas with all of the aid and all of the arms. I'm sure they did.
Everything is a lie. Turkey has now sent 80 people to help look, apparently, for the bodies of the hostages,
Which is
because the
just
Hamas don't have the
strange,
tools and the equipment to dig underground.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, you have the largest tunnel network in the world.
And you don't know how to
And
do
you
it.
don't know how to dig? Is that really that's what's being said now? So everything is a spin, everything is a lie, and it's all lining up to eventually, I believe, converge against Israel.
And all of these nations now have access into Israel through Gaza.
So
through
right
Egypt.
now, like as we speak, we already have U.S. troops on the ground, from what I understand. You have Turkish rescue something, but Turkey has people on the ground in Gaza.
And these are
already
armed forces, though, right? These are like their military is coming in.
From Turkey, they're saying these are like experts that know how to like search and rescue kind of people. I don't know. But we know Turkey has people on the ground. We also know Turkey hates Israel.
Indonesia, though, is sending troops.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. Or they've said they would. Defense Minister Israel Katz announced that he has ordered the IDF to draw up a comprehensive plan to defeat Hamas in the Gaza Strip should the conflict resume. So the IDF is already preparing to go back into Gaza if they need to, which obviously Hamas has already broken their side of the deal by not releasing the bodies of the deceased hostages. They've already broken their deal by not showing even the slightest hint of disarming. And we know also the IDF is preparing to demolish the tunnel network, regardless. I believe that's like no matter what, that's going to happen for sure. So the question of it's not the question of is the war over? I don't think it's this question of how quickly will it break out again, or will there be a period before a new war breaks out?
Well, what's just so difficult to wrap our minds around is that the Germans don't celebrate the Holocaust, and it's not like the Japanese celebrate the day that they bombed Pearl Harbor. But in Gaza, October 7th, and in Judea and Samaria, it's a day that's celebrated.
Mhm.
There's a restaurant called the Nova now that just opened up in Gaza. They're celebrating the massacre. They're celebrating their hatred. And it's until we actually defeat the culture of hate and death and the worship of this demonic religion that calls for murdering and kidnapping and raping in the name of their God. Until we defeat that, this war will never end.
Yeah, talking about the talks in Gaza, you have Egypt, Qatar, Turkey in negotiation rooms alongside U.S. and Israeli officials. They're calling it Phase B, right? Like the next phase of the plan is centered on verified disarmament of Hamas, an interim technocratic administration vetted for security, and a regional security presence. Options Arab states are weighing carefully to avoid any occupier optics. And Trump has warned the U.S. will forcibly disarm Hamas if it balks, underscoring that compliance isn't optional. I just want to emphasize how Western that sounds. You have a group of nations meeting in Egypt, and what the plan they have put together is like a fantasy world. Like it's not even rooted in the realms of reality or possibility. And they have like, basically it sounds like nobody has a clue about who Hamas is, how they operate. And to me, it sounds a whole lot like trying to implement this plan against ISIS, who was like the nemesis of the free world 15 years ago.
One of the biggest telltale signs that something's off to me is it says Peace 2025 on you see the picture of their big table there. They're all sitting around, all the world leaders, and you've got France and all these guys, absolute crooks. It seems like, just evil people, all the Arab world, and Trump's there and it says Peace 2025, right? The big letters, and it's all
They're
decorated.
calling him the peace president.
And I'm literally saying though that there's no peace. This is literally
at
leading
the same
to the biggest
time
war
while
of
these
world
talks
time.
are underway, verified disarmament, interim technocratic administration vetted for security. While they're talking about that, Hamas is armed and in the streets of Gaza, shooting their own people in the streets. That's the reality of what's going
Right.
on.
I need to just make it clear when they're saying, I hear President Trump saying peace. There's some people saying 75 years, some people saying 3,000 years, a 3,000-year conflict, and I'm bringing peace. First of all, I really think that Trump is a tremendous, tremendous leader, and I want to say I'm grateful for what he did, even though I think he recognized that he's an America firster, and what he's doing in helping Israel with this battle is ultimately helping America in the battle against the global jihad. He sees that and he knows it. So when we're like, thank you, President Trump, okay, let's relax on the thank you. He's doing what's best for America. But they don't, there's a lack of understanding what real peace means. At best, this is a temporary ceasefire. Peace, like the chapter 122 from the book of Psalms. Laman beit Hashem Elokeinu avakshata. For the sake of my brothers and friends, I will seek peace in your midst. For the sake of the household, I will request good for you. When you have real peace, you're saying, what can I do to bring life and blessing to the other? That's not what's happening here. It's not like the Hamas is saying, finally we've reconciled. How can we bless Israel and the Jewish people? That's not what's happening. It's a very cynical and temporary ceasefire, and we need to see it for what it is.
It's also delusional to think that the Hamas are going to disarm, leave Gaza, and become bankers in some other country somewhere. They're just going to adopt a regular civilian life now, somewhere else. It's to think that that's going to happen, that peace 2025, that's just delusional.
Yeah, if there's anything that all of the returnees, the captives from Gaza have returned saying, it's that they're all saying there's not one good one there. There's not one of the person that they saw during their entire experience that had anything but the bloodthirsty desire to murder and decapitate and rip them limb from limb.
Yeah, I think that's
Children.
an important point to bring out, is that, the Western media wants to go on and on. Even some of the so-called conservatives in America go on and on and on about the peaceful civilians or the innocent civilians in Gaza, right? Whereas you have them showing, that they protest in Hamas, they hate Hamas, all that kind of stuff. But the instant Israel agrees to a ceasefire or withdraws from Gaza, they all hit the streets, right? The candy's being passed out, the celebrations. It's like the day after IDF withdraws, the supermarkets are open, the restaurants are open again. Like the instant there's even a hint of a ceasefire, they turn against Israel and they side with Hamas again, showing
Well, they
where their
elected
true heart.
Hamas. They went to their schools. They listened to their broadcasts on their media network. It was a society that was Hamas. It wasn't that there was like innocent civilians and the Hamas took them over. They were supported by the people. They were loved by the people, and they're still loved by the people.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, we all know if Hamas, if there was elections held for the Palestinian Authority, Hamas would win today, even right now.
I think on that point, Luke, we have to say that Hamas is not only an entity of Gaza. If you say you solve the Gaza problem by bringing the PA in, the PA is not even ruling technically. If we want to get down to it, who's ruling Judea and Samaria? Well, Hamas is the most popular. Literally,
can we show that video?
There's a video here and they're waving Hamas flags here in Samaria. It's not a Gaza issue alone. It's an Arab proxy war funded and fueled by the Arab world here in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza alike. Here it is. The green Hamas flag going up in mass here in Samaria. And this is everywhere. I mean, you'll see this. You go down here to just neighboring town of Shechem, modern day Nablus here, the Arab town. Hamas, crazy support for Hamas. All of these villages, Hamas. Now, who knows what's going to happen with this, but I haven't heard anybody talking about defeating Hamas in Judea and Samaria and in Jerusalem, by the way. Hamas is big in Jerusalem. East Jerusalem, packed full of Hamas supporters.
One of the leaders of the Jerusalem branch of Hamas was just released in this terrorist deal.
Yeah, sent back in here into Judea and Samaria, into Jerusalem. They had all kind. There was a number of them. Sent back in. I think about it when the whole world is crying out peace, like Jeremiah talks about. Peace. Where's the peace? There's no peace. I mean, literally, the Bible talks about that. What's the Jewish thought on that? It's just what it is.
What do you mean? What's the Jewish thought on that?
On Jeremiah's words, like when the whole world screams peace, or literally, I don't know the context of the Jeremiah, but he's literally saying
we can see it's transcendent, timeless wisdom. Because how much it was Trump wanting to put peace 2025? It's been a 3,000-year conflict, and I've brought peace, and I am Mr. Peace, and nominate me for a Nobel Peace Prize. Everyone wants to assume that there'll be peace, but the last thing that the Jihad wants is peace. That's literally what they only want: death, destruction, conquering, and war. That's their call. So we can say peace as much as we want, but as long as jihad still exists in the world as a theology, there will never be peace.
That's why it actually says, in chapter 6, it says, they have healed the wound of my people lightly, saying
that's kind of how you feel right now, right?
When there's no peace, meaning it's a very superficial type of healing, which is why I feel like even when I was talking to you, Jeremy, I'm saying we're setting ourselves up here and we're like, but we're so thirsty. We so badly wanted the hostages home. Okay. But it's
healed lightly.
It's healed lightly. The deeper infectious disease is festering now more than ever. Right. So we have to just be aware of that.
Well, the one hope that I have is that when there were no hostages involved, Israel was really able to take care of business. We took care of business in Syria. We took care of business with Hezbollah. We took care of business with Iran. And in Gaza, we were always tiptoeing through tulips because of the hostages. We didn't exactly know what to do and how to do. Maybe now that the hostages are finally removed, if they don't follow through this peace plan, Israel will actually be able to take care of business. That's the one silver lining and hope that I have.
But that's my thought about why Hamas agreed to this, because they understood that. They understood that, yes, they are getting rid of their one token protective measure that prevented Israel from doing that, but they're replacing it with Qatar and Turkey and Russia and all of these countries from around the world that are very solidly going to protect them, that if anything happens to them, we're talking about a global war.
Jeremy, you were talking about something earlier where you were mentioning Trump, and I literally do believe that Trump has the best interest in mind. I just think he's a bit naive on this
We're going to talk about
specific
what he
topic.
said this week. He said, so he told CNN yesterday that Israel could resume its military operations in Gaza if Hamas fails to uphold the terms of the current ceasefire. He said, basically, Israel could return to action as soon as I say the word. And then he also said, what's going on with Hamas, that'll be straightened out quickly, which definitely shows somewhat of the naivety.
Well, I
of
mean,
the
his speech in the
situation.
Knesset this week when he visited Israel, which was amazing. The president of America flew to Israel to be here when the hostages were coming out and gave a speech. And his speech, you said you listened to the whole thing there, Jeremy, and you were just saying there's a bit of naivety in his approach with the Arab world.
Well, he was saying that there's such an opportunity for peace now. There's an opportunity for economic growth. What they should do is, it's very hot. They should invest in artificial intelligence. That's the new thing. I'm like, you want the Hamas to invest in artificial intelligence? AI, I mean,
Maybe
that is just
intelligence.
so removed. They have no interest in peace.
They could invest in any
Hamas
intelligence.
is like,
to a
we
degree.
need grok.
That is not.
You're right.
It's just to understand what are their interests. And it's like projecting Western interests on like, well, I want economic growth. I want peace and prosperity. I want to be able to grow my economy. They have no interest in growing their economy or the billions of dollars that were given to them. They wouldn't have built a tunnel network to hold hostages. They have no interest in AI. They have interest in killing Jews.
And really, I don't think they have any personal interest in depth. They have an interest of fulfilling the wish of their proxy leaders. That's where their money is. That's what their fuel is. So if they do a good job, they get more.
Yeah, well, I
Why
don't
not?
know if I agree with that. Very often in the West, they tend to project that and say, well, it's not really ideological or spiritual. They want money. That's true, they want money.
Oh, well,
but
Islam.
at the same time,
Yeah.
I remember when Khania's children were killed, right? His children are killed. I am honored to have my children killed. There is a very deep and profound ideological, spiritual, religious commitment to this. If they can also cash in and become billionaires, they'll do it. But if they have to live in caves, they'll do that too. Meaning their entire life force, since they come into the world, all they want to do is to be shaheeds. They're consumed with Jews. I remember the very kind, loving Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach was at a KKK rally in Skokie, Chicago, and he said, these neo-Nazis, there's something so holy about them. From morning to night, all they do is think about Jews. I wish they thought good things, but they're consumed with thinking about Jews. There's something happening here where the level of total immersion should cause the world to ask, what's really happening there? Something deeper is happening there. And obviously this is not political or all of these other thinly veiled sillinesses. There's a deep spiritual reality that really needs to be looked at, particularly by the nation of Israel.
Well, I think the nation of Israel has a task, and it's to expose the truth. And I'll tell you what I mean. God is found in the world through good and evil. If we can make the distinction between good and evil, then really there has to be a standard that you're calling something good and that you're calling something. What is that standard? That standard is God. And so what happened on October 7th was such a glaring reality of kidnapping babies, of raping, of billion, of just the disaster of the evil that was exposed. And now the world is doing its very best to cover it up. And so if we can just expose the light and shine a light on the darkness to allow people to really distinguish between good and evil, we're bringing people one step closer to understanding that God is in charge and that God really is at the center of this conflict. It's like biblical destiny is unfolding in the land of Israel, and the battleground is the land, and it's a clash between good and evil. Can we see it right now?
I was just reading, and this may sound a little doomsday, but I was reading Ezekiel 38 the other day. And it never hit me, though, but it's exactly what you're saying. At the end of every passage that talks about the horrors of this great war and all these nations coming against Israel, every time it mentions it twice, it's also that the world would know God. And so that Israel would be able to shine the light of God to the whole world. And I never realized that. I don't know. You probably did because you guys are Jewish. But every time it's just for the purpose that the whole world would know God.
Well, that's why there's such propaganda now against Israel. Like I was just doing a little bit of research that the top podcasts in the world now are, do you want to read off the list? But they are all right now just spewing propaganda and lies about Israel because God's truth comes through truth, and the enemies of the Jews are the enemies of truth. That's how they'll call boys girls and girls boys, and they'll call evil good and good evil, and they'll try to just a smoke screen over the truth. But hopefully, if we just stay the course. And at this funeral that I went to the other night, it was like the most noble and brave of the living were these like hostages that have survived. And he said, I'm ready to go back into Gaza to return the body of my friend. just like so noble and so good, of the living and the noble and brave of the dead, came together and were up against these just demonic evil forces. And if we can just expose that.
Yeah, here's just a little montage. Just a little montage. Check this out.
How can you say something?
I mean, just the alliances that I see happening are almost comical. They're entertaining. If you stop feeling threatened by what's happening and understand that this is in God's hands, and you just watch it in sort of a sober, dispassionate way, seeing Candace Owens, who is consumed with hatred for Israel and the Jewish people. She could say she's not, but I mean, it's obvious. Having on Nick Fuentes, who hates, by his own admission, women and blacks, and they're together talking about, right? And he's like, I hated Jews before it was even cool to hate Jews. He said that. I hated Jews before it's even cool to hate Jews. And then he calls her a grifter because she's saying Jews killed Charlie Kirk. And he's like, what? They didn't kill Charlie Kirk. You're so consumed with hatred that if Ben Shapiro were to be killed, he said, you'd say that Israel did that too. Don't confuse all of the excellent reasons to hate Jews with your contrived reasons to hate. I mean, it's just the conversations that are happening are so absurd. Listen to this just latest rant I just saw this morning.
And for any Israelis watching this right now, I want you to be clear. I want you to understand this, okay? You are hated internationally. Hated. The whole international community loathes you. Young American citizens in this country, both left and right, loathe you. And eventually, these are the people who are going to come into power. Don't be mistaken based on the propaganda you hear in American media. That's not representative of how the American people feel about you. You're hated. And it's not because you're Jewish. It's because you slaughter innocent people. It's because you think you're God's chosen people when you act like absolute demons. You guys like to slaughter people and steal land, and you think you're better than everyone else. You think that you're entitled to everything, including our tax dollars. It's disgusting.
You think the world's obsessed by this topic, maybe? It's crazy.
It's crazy.
I wonder what all these podcasts are going to talk about now. I mean, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Theo Von, Alex Jones, what are they all going to say now?
Yeah,
now that
true.
there's going to be a little bit of quiet for at least some time, or maybe there won't be quiet. Who knows?
I doubt it.
You doubt it. I wonder what is
That's
going
kinda
to trigger Israel to actually re-engage in the war. They've already broken the first part of the deal. They haven't returned the hostage bodies that they said they would return.
Well, Trump said now for the 15th time, maybe all hell will break loose if you don't agree to this.
That was kind of my last question for you guys, because we do need to wrap up. It's like, what do you think? Will there be a lot of? I saw one guy was talking about Ezekiel 38, saying that the end of this war is like a fulfillment of prophecy, that there'll be a time of peace, and then there'll be a massive global war. But then, you know, Jeremy, you were saying we could have also said that about 5 times now since 1948, right? So maybe there will be a period of peace, whether it's like 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever. Obviously, there will be a war in Gaza again, and there will be more wars in Israel at some
Solely
point.
on the fact that we didn't win.
Right. And I mean, Israel's stated goals were the eradication of Hamas, and Hamas is right now patrolling the streets of Gaza armed and violating, you know, the terms of the deal to disarm and be exiled, basically.
I don't think it's going to be a war in Gaza. I think it's going to be a war in Israel, a regional war, and a global war.
Yeah.
That's what I think we have coming up on the horizon.
I also don't think it's going to be 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. I think it's going to be 3 days. And I think it's just a matter of time until Israel has to re-engage with the Hamas, because they haven't even slowed down.
That's right. And I think the epicenter is not going to be Gaza.
Where do you think it's going to be?
Mountains of Israel, Judea and Samaria. This is where the forces are gathering here. All the proxies now. I mean, Gaza's been hit pretty heavily. They're still, holding, like you're saying. But the real forces that have been around in Judea and Samaria, the Hamas flags are flying here like crazy. There's a huge population here in Judea and Samaria. And I believe that this is going to be the next war that has not been fought as intensely as there's been fighting here, yes, but not nearly as intensely as what's gone down in Gaza.
Right, let's actually read Ezekiel 38. It says, after many days you will be summoned. In the latter years you will come into the land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel. They will dwell securely, all of them. You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages, right? We got them. There's no defense of them. I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful people who live securely, all of them without walls and having neither bars nor gates, right? They're talking about the hilltop settlements of Judea, and they're going to come against them. And God is saying, Oholei Yehuda Yishkon Levetach, the tents of Judea will dwell securely. The place that seems like it's the greatest risk is going to be the greatest safety.
And my
That's
biggest question is are we at that time? Or was the people of South Jerusalem, when they were defeated in 1948, were they also thinking the same thing? What time are we in?
Well, I think
What
you'll
about
have to
2,000 years ago?
tune into the
I was
next
about-
Israel
I was
guys to
about
find
say,
out.
On that note, let's reconvene here next week, same time, same place.
We may have some
And you
answers.
guys,
By then,
we'll have
if Jeremy's right, we will have some answers
we'll have
because the
the
world will have
updates.
already begun 3 days from now.
Yeah. Guys, stay tuned. Could not be a more exciting time to be alive. I think we could agree on that, right?
We all do agree on that.
And let's remember to, like Jeremy said, give our full 100% rejoicing and joy to the miracle that happened this week, regardless of the rest of it, right? The other side of the deal, and maybe war breaking out again in the next 3 days. So we can rejoice that the captives of Israel have been returned home. And I think that's something that everyone can rejoice in. You can join in. Guys, make sure to stand. Make sure to stand with Israel. Just quit listening to the voices of negativity out there and connect with what's really happening here in the land of Israel. Guys, God willing, we will be back next week right here at the Israel Guys.